aside.
Any legislation would need support of at least 10 Republicans with all 50 Democrats to advance in the Senate. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
California man armed with a gun and other weapons is behind bars on charges of trying to kill Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. Police arrested John Roski Wednesday near Kavanaugh's Maryland home.
Roski is accused of bringing to Justice Kavanaugh's neighborhood black tactical chest rig and tactical knife, Glock 17 with a pair of magazines and ammo, pepper spray, zip ties, hammer, screwdriver, nail punch, crowbar, pistol light, duct tape, and even hiking boots.
Fox's Kevin Cork. And court documents show federal prosecutors want R&B singer R. Kelly to sit in prison for more than 25 years for 6 offenses. America's listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. More than shoes. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
A Marine Corps Osprey aircraft crashed Wednesday in Southern California near the Mexican border with 5 crew members on board. Local media report at least 4 of the crew died. The Osprey is based at Camp Pendleton. Arizona carries out its second execution since May after a nearly 8-year hiatus.
66-year-old Frank Atwood was pronounced dead at Arizona State Prison at 10:16 a.m. local time by lethal injection in the 1984 kidnapping and killing of 8-year-old Vicky Hoskinson in Tucson, Arizona.
Today marks final justice for our daughter.
Hoskinson's mother, Debbie Carlson.
Vicky was a vibrant little girl with an infectious laugh and a smile that would melt your heart.
Saying this day is not about her daughter's killer, who was denied a last-minute appeal by the U.S. Supreme Court and who became the second death row inmate executed in the state since Arizona resumed capital punishment last month. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
The human cost of the war in Ukraine mounts as workers pull up to 100 bodies from each smashed building in the devastated city of Mariupol. One official describes the gruesome effort as an endless caravan of death. Over the next decade, the Interior Department plans to phase out the sale of plastic water bottles on public lands.
Interior Secretary Deb Haaland calling for the Interior Department to reduce the purchase, sale, and distribution of single-use plastic items and packaging on 480 million acres of federally managed lands, with a goal of phasing out the products by 2032.
Fox's Hillary Barsky. And in overnight trading, crude oil prices rising. U.S. crude at $122 a barrel. Brent crude $123. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Kings Guam World Tennis Tour, presented by GTA, is bringing international tennis back to Guam. 4 weeks of international play will swing into action with 2 weeks of juniors, followed by 2 weeks of pros, May the 15th through June 12th. The Guam National Tennis Federation will host world-ranked players who will be coming to Guam from all over the world. Netters will compete for ranking points and cash to improve their position among the world's best. Matches will be played daily at the Guam National Tennis Center in Harmon, starting May 15th through June 12th. Special thanks to our platinum sponsors, Dimension Systems, New Gen, American Medical Center, and Morico Equipment.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarte Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY. Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A good way to start an afternoon talk show. And, of course, this is the only morning talk show that airs in the afternoon, or the only afternoon talk show that airs in the morning, or maybe I don't know what time it is, Jose, but how should I know? I don't have a PhD.
Oh, we're not going to tell our secret.
Yeah. So if you want to be a tailgater, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But let's start out with Jemmy Cutney. Here's the daily news for today. The Post is still on, the editorial board at the Post is still on strike, so we won't have an editorial from them for a while. Our view: ensure tourist attraction businesses have support needed to properly serve visitors. The tourism industry leaders most closely connected to our visitor markets in Asia are speaking, and we need to pay attention. Travel is on the rise again, and tourists are filling up flights and hotels all around the world in search of the next big adventure, a new culture to experience, or for some, just a clean, quiet, I'm going to add my own word here, uncluttered beach. And as vacationers mark off bucket lists and set their daily agendas with activities, sites to visit, and places to eat, our local visitor industry must reestablish where Guam will land on this summer's list of hot vacation spots. Now, I called this way back at the beginning of the pandemic, and I said we're going to have a really hard time coming back to where we were, because so much of our tourist trade from Japan was built up over so long, relationships, contracts, etc. So that Guam was almost the default go-to destination from Japan. But then all of those habits and relationships were broken, and now the Japanese can travel again. They're probably going to say, well, where shall we go? Well, we can go to Guam. Yeah, but we've been there so many times. What about Thailand? Or what about Okinawa? Or what about this place or that place? The Koreans to the same extent. So remember what I said yesterday. Our advantages here: sun, sand, and a really nice climate in the wintertime. Very important. If you've ever been to Seoul in the wintertime, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Tokyo, not so much. Would you believe that if you walk from the Radisson Hotel, not far from Narita, to downtown Tomisato, the little village that the Radisson is in, if you know where to look, you can find orange trees in Japan.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it gets cold in the wintertime there, but not like Seoul. Yeah. So it gets so cold in Korea that it just dampens your soul or something like that. So that's what we've got. Other places have sun, sand, and warm weather too. But as Tuesday's Get Guam Going forum organized by the Travel and Tourism Association revealed, our little paradise in the Marianas has obstacles to overcome on our road to bringing back more than 1 million tourists a year to our shores. Jinju Lee, a regional planning leader for Korean travel company Hana Tour, told forum attendees that although Guam is a closer vacation choice for South Korean tourists, Guam remains a monotonous tour shot. Monotonous. Wow. And explained that the most common complaint from South Korean tourists who recently visited the island was that Guam was not the same as before. Now there's a disconnect here. First he says it's monotonous, and then he says it's not the same. Maybe they've changed the definition of the word monotony. Yeah, man, I couldn't handle the monotony of that restaurant. Every time I went in there, the menu was different. There were different people there.
Change is monotonous.
Yeah, and it just got to be so monotonous that, like Yogi Berra, I said, nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded. No! We got to work together to ensure that Guam is tourism ready, said Sam Shinohara, managing director of United Airlines, who participated in the forum virtually from Sydney, Australia. We need our bus lines back online, and we need our retail and our restaurants back in full operation. Well, I know 2 Rays in full operation. I can tell you that for sure. Shinohara explained that although travelers from the Japanese market are not what they used to be, visitor numbers are increasing. But before the visitor industry focuses entirely on bringing tourists back, we need to ensure that our local businesses, most especially our tourist attractions, are operating at full capacity, ready to welcome, serve, and engage with paying travelers. An island with understaffed businesses and limited activities will face challenges as we compete with tourism destinations like Hawaii. Our island, our people, and our rich history offer a unique cultural experience. Yeah, people will really enjoy those dances we've been doing since 1980. A rich cultural tradition. We must ensure that the local businesses catering to visitors have standards and support they need to make Guam the world-class destination our travel brochures and marketers present for our source markets. I'm going to add one more thing to the list. How about cleaning up the roadsides? The road between Dadido and Jigo is a disgrace. And once again, if you want to see what a roadside ought to look like, head for the south. Go to Inalahan. If the whole island looked like Inalahan, it'd be a really good start to being back on the map as a good tourist destination. We don't want people to come down here and say, hey, no, I'm not going there again. They don't even mow their lawns. Okay, let's take a look at the card. Of course, we start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And then today we've got Crystal versus reporters. Crystal being Crystal Paco San Augustine, formerly known as Crystal Paco. We've got McNinch versus Mendiola. PNC versus Kyle Mendiola. No, I'm sorry, it's Kyle Dahelic. I hit the Mendiola key too many times. The guy's name is Dahelic. You remember him, don't you, Jose? The guy that wrote the letter to the editor. It was so critical of the Power Authority. And then finally, we've got Manuel Lujan Cruz versus Bob. And I guess every tailgate out there saying, Manuel Cruz, why don't you pick on somebody your own size? To which Manuel Cruz said, God, Bob's about a foot taller than I am. He ought to be okay. Yeah, so Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. Well, I've made a lot about Paul Zerzan and his little tete-a-tete with the Daily News. When Paul Zerzan wrote to the Daily News and said, that rice that you see at every fiesta, that everybody calls red rice, Now, let me read Paul's letter here, just to make sure I got it right. The world is undergoing rapid change and cultures are experiencing traumatic shocks as cherished myths are destroyed by cruel realities. Guam is no exception, and we're far enough into the 21st century to face a very ugly fact concerning the false basis concerning something very central to the Chamorro belief system, and since it very much concerns feasting associated with holiday season, now is a good time as any to acknowledge the truth. And this is not the only myth that needs debunking. Paul says there's no such thing as red rice. The achoti-colored rice traditionally eaten on Guam is orange and not red. Calling it red rice for centuries does not make it red. It is orange, and a color wheel is not needed to see this. So please, let's stop looking foolish by calling it red rice, and let's call it by its proper name, orange rice. And as I said the last time I read this, aren't you glad Paul pointed this out? Well, that didn't work for the Daily News, because Therese Padua Howe comes back with a column that's entitled, Readers to Zerzan, Leave Our Red Rice Alone. Yeah. And she combed Facebook and did a lot of research to come up with this, and she said, let's see here. Once you see it's orange, you really can't bring yourself to call it. In an interview, Zerzan said he was prompted to write the letter following a Thanksgiving luncheon. He said that he was shocked after 30 years of living on the island to realize that red rice isn't actually that color. Once you see that it's orange, you really can't bring yourself to call it red. So I think, truth is more important than tradition. And then Howe winds it up by saying, judging from the response, however, the people were not amused. Quote, the only thing Chamorros are more protective of than family is our food. Red rice is red regardless of a reddish-orange hue, said Paula Lujan Keneni, Chamorro cookbook author and founder of Guam Mama Cooks. Well, she's published, so that makes her an authority, doesn't it, Jose? Yeah, so that's what Paul said, and I hung on to this because it's such a good demonstration of what I deal with every day on the show here, which is the narrative versus the truth. Anybody who looks at this picture is going to say, yeah, the orange and the rice in the platter is orange. But the narrative is obviously, no, it's red. And if you don't agree that it's red, and if you don't say it's red, we're going to verbally beat you up. And so I had my own chart around here, which I probably can't find right now, where the word red was printed in orange letters and the word orange was printed in red letters, just to show you how the truth and the narrative collide. Well, it looks like Kentucky Fried has gone me one better, because I'm going to show you an ad that I plucked from the Daily News today. You see what it says? One large red rice. So they've got the picture, and just so you don't make any mistakes, they've got the narrative and the picture. So even Kentucky Fried has bought into systemic racism. Okay, let's go on with the card here. Let's see what else we've got. Systemic racism. Next on the card, Well, I better go through my, I have to go through the things that I plucked from the classified pages of the paper. I got one that's really interesting here. Of course, the Port Authority didn't do their notice correctly. They made the old business mistake. Item number 6 on the agenda for their June 16 meeting is old business, without any description of what the old business is. And this violates Public Law 36-34, which says that each of the two notices that you publish must contain the agenda of the meeting and the items that are to be discussed and or acted upon must be described in such a manner as to put the reader on notice of what it is. Old business suggests anything we've ever talked about before could be one of the things we talk about. So by doing that, you've got an agenda with here 8 items on it. Everything you decide and do, Rory, is void because you violated the open government law. And it's not the first time. Now, I suspect that if I were able to get somebody on the phone, or maybe I should even do a sunshine request asking for the public records that are omitted from old business. You know, if it said old business lease for new crane, that would be okay. But I suspect that if I queried them, I'd say, what is the old business? Why isn't it in the agenda? We couldn't put it in the agenda because it was a personnel matter. All right. Next on the card is the Land Trust Commission, who complied with the government law. But if you're a newspaper reporter, you don't have anything to do, pick up this agenda and take a look at it. As an example, item number 7, CLTC eligible beneficiary process. A, approval and delegation of responsibility for the administrative director. What's that old saying? Once burned, twice cautious. Once you touch that hot burn, or if you're back in the Middle West, you know, and you're out on the playground and you wonder what it would be like to touch that playground slide with your tongue.
What did you do in your childhood, Bob?
Yeah, you'll never do it again, right?
Don't lick the frozen telephone pole.
Yeah. Once burned, twice cautious. So they should have learned their lesson about delegating authority to their administrative director. Remember a gentleman named, let's see, Hattick. What was his first name? Chuck? No. Anyhow, it was the third one, Hattrick the third. Yeah, who really made a shambles of the whole place. They found out that he and his predecessor, Michael Bora, were signing leases, even though the statute says the leases have to be signed by the chairman of the board, approved and signed by the chairman. Even the deputy director was signing leases. So there's a story here, if anybody has the time to go and ask a few questions. Then there, number 8, the 1995 application status update. Well, I don't see how the 1995 applications can be anything but nullities, since the Chamorro Land Trust Commission caved in on the settlement with the Justice Department, and being Chamorro and having a place on that line won't even get you a cup of coffee down in Touray. And then number 10, unauthorized usage of lot 7164 Jigo. Unauthorized because what? So there's 3 good news stories right here. The meeting is on July 22. Wow, July 22. They're really giving a lot of notice, aren't they? When, I'm sorry, that's the next meeting. This meeting is going to be June 16 at 1 p.m. at their own conference room. So somebody from the Post or the Daily News ought to be there if you're a news hound, if you're really interested in doing a story. Okay, the next one I found is not the notice of a meeting, but it's really, really interesting. There is a nonprofit corporation that printed up its revenues and expenses for the fiscal year that ended April 30, 2022. This is required of all nonprofits operating on Guam. So the liabilities, total liabilities and net assets, $391,250. Pretty good for a nonprofit, right? And revenues for fiscal 2022, the gain or sale of investments, $18,239. What are these guys, a hedge fund? Donation income, $89,600. Yeah, it's on page, I can't tell you what page it's on, Jose. Donation, $89,600. Dividend income, $7,859. I'd like to find out who their investment advisor is. That's pretty hefty dividends. Expenses. Well, they spent about $1,433 on telephone and telecommunications. Professional fees, almost $5,000. Bank service fees, $4,458. Other expenses, $3,038. Total expenses, $94,581. Change in net assets, $21,117. So they got more than $21,000 more at the end of 2022 than they did at the end of 2021. This all sounds pretty good, doesn't it? So what did they do with that money? What did that $391,000 nonprofit corporation do with its money? Well, a scholarship. Yeah, they issued a scholarship. You want to know how many scholarships? One. You know what the value of the scholarship was? $5,000.
Wait, what?
Yeah, $5,000. Yeah, and now there was one expense that I kind of skipped over. You know, I like to, you know how I like to do this. It's kind of like playing cards. You don't play your trump card first unless sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But here comes the trump card out of this deck. Salaries and benefits, $75,665. $75,000 salaries and benefits for a nonprofit that, as far as we can tell from looking at their publication, did one $5,000 scholarship.
I can see director, maybe secretary.
Mm-hmm.
But wow, that's pretty good.
Business development director. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how else could you spend $75,000 on salaries and benefits for a $5,000 scholarship? Now, I don't know if there's news here or there isn't news here, but there's a reason that these things are published in the paper. And the reason is so that nosy people like me can snoop through them and look at them and read them in a light most unfavorable to the nonprofit that published it. And if there's an explanation coming, fine. I'd really like to hear it. Now, I suppose you're all wondering what the name of this nonprofit is, this almost $400,000 nonprofit. Here's the name of it. The Felix M. and Governor Carlos G. Camacho Scholarship Foundation. Yeah. That's it. So,
well, they weren't buying votes.
Say again?
They weren't buying votes.
Yeah, they weren't buying votes with it, that's for sure. But this just really doesn't look good at all. And I hope that I'm reading something into it that isn't there.
Maybe possibly out of all the applications, only one qualified. Who knows?
It's possible. It's possible.
But that's a good investment, whoever's doing it for them.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to shed some light on the Felix M. and Governor Carlos G. Camacho Scholarship Foundation, 888, as you were 671, 888 talk. I'd be more than happy to listen to it. I will break into the card if I have to. All right, let's take a short break here, and we'll go on to Crystal Paco.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing The Point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, next item on the card is Crystal Paco versus reporters. Now, mothers, if you have small children in the house, have them listen in, because I think we're seeing the advent of a new game for kids. The name of the game is Crystal May I. And here it goes. Wednesday marked the end of a 3-day Wuhan virus after-action review officials called a hot wash. Now, I think this must be a misprint, because instead of hot, I think what they meant to say was white. Wednesday marked the end of a 3-day Wuhan virus after-action review officials called a whitewash. And I'm not talking about systemic racism here either. Hosted by the Department of Public Health and Social Services, the event was meant to reflect on the Wuhan virus response and share challenges, successes, and recommendations. Public Health Director Art San Augustine thanked his team during his opening remarks on the first day of the event. Quote, "Because of you, as of June 4, you have inoculated 137,037 people of Guam's 153,836 population." But I think they missed Ray Gibson, didn't they, Jose? Sorry about that, guys. 800 or 89.8%. Congratulations, San Augustine said. The event was held at the Dusatani Guam Resort. Yeah, we don't have a Motel 6 on the island, so they had to go to the Dusat.
Thank you, federal funds.
Yeah, thank you for the federal funds. Yeah, news reporters were able to briefly sit in and take photos, but were not allowed to listen to the discussion. Crystal Paco San Augustine, the governor's spokeswoman, at the beginning of the meeting said, "All right, reporters, if you'd like to take pictures of this event, you must say, 'Crystal, may I?'" And a couple of the reporters said, "Crystal, may I?" To which Ms. Paco San Augustine, "Yes, you may. Get your cameras out." After they took pictures, a couple of the reporters said, "We'd like to stick around and do a story on this." Crystal said, "You didn't say the magic word, so you're out of here." Denied. You did not say, "Crystal, may I?" Yeah, an after-action report will be made public shortly, according to Crystal Paco San Agustin, the governor's spokeswoman. But the reporters were allowed only to sit in and take photos, and then they were shushed out of the door. Kind of reminds me of the closed-door session that the governor had when he sucked in 14 of the Republicans to get them to show back to cards again, to show the governor their whole cards. You know, as she sat there with a stack of chips on top of hers, saying, "You can't see these cards. You got to pay to see these cards," right? Yeah, so the same old thing. But of course, the reporters rose up in righteous indignation. The police were called. No, nobody.
Nope.
As far as we can tell from this report, in the what paper is it here?
The Post?
Yeah, in the Post. Not a single reporter said boo. No one said, "Hey, we're the media. Is this a public meeting? Is it a private meeting? Is it an executive session?"
You know, the only thing that sounds like a protest is the headline.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Reporters were barred from most discussions.
But you'll see anything like that in the news.
Not a thing. Yeah, and they very quietly went along and complied with Mother San Augustine.
Cross their fingers that there's an opening at Adelup.
Yeah. We've come together, all these agencies, in coordination with public health, and we're looking at what are some of the lessons learned, some of the positive responses, and also the challenges that we went through, and we can now improve and have a more robust plan in the case of another pandemic, said Robert Camacho, the acting director of corrections, one of the agency heads at Wednesday's session. The first half day included meetings with public health's external partners. The second half was to wrap up with public health responders. A number of government agencies and private organizations were invited, but no reporters. So there's a long quote here from Robert Camacho. They must have caught him outside the meeting to get anything from him. So when is a story not a story? When the reporters don't write it. And when is a story not a story when the writers don't write it? Answer, when they take steps to put themselves in a position so they can write a story. And not being aggressive, not being forceful, being nice guys about the whole thing. Very good, Guam Daily Post. I think perhaps the virus that infected your editorial board, causing them to not do their jobs anymore, has perhaps spread to the news department. Next, I've got McNinch versus Mendiola, but I've got somebody in the green room right now, and that would be Harold, who has a question on the open government law. Go for it, Harold. Ask your question.
Oh, geez, you woke me up.
Uh-huh.
You know, you're always talking about these, if they do something and it's void. Has anybody ever checked to see if they actually void anything?
Well, I know of one situation where something was voided when I sued the director of land management.
Well, yeah, but that was a different kind of thing, I think. I mean, like the Port Authority or the GVB, you know, you can't talk about this stuff at the meeting. If you do, it's void.
And that's true.
I wonder if they really do talk about stuff.
Well,
if they do, there's nobody to say, hey, it's void.
We've had, I think, 3 reports of things that came before the Land Use Commission that couldn't be dealt with because the so-called hybrid board screwed up on their notices.
Yeah, that stuff.
Now, let me, Harold, let me tell you how these things work, okay? When you have something like this, unless you got a busybody like me that goes around and pays attention to all of this stuff, no one is going to sue to void what happened in the meeting just because he's a nosy busybody. The procedural challenge arises when someone gets stuck on the wrong end of one of these decisions and says, we've got to set aside that decision. He beats it down to his lawyer and tells the lawyer, figure out some way to do this. And the lawyer said, fine. And the lawyer comes back and says, yeah, they screwed up on the notice, so I can have that meeting voided. They'll have to start over from scratch and do it again. That's the enforcement in these things. It's the disappointed party that is the enforcement arm, not some government agency. We make the same mistake. We have a government that doesn't function, so then we appoint a government official to make sure that the government functions, and he doesn't function either. So the real hammer is the disappointed citizen who has a financial interest in the void action that the board took. Does that help you, Harold?
No, it answers the question, but I was just curious if there's anybody that ever checked. Maybe a reporter or somebody. Well, we don't have any reporters on the island.
It would be a fine thing for reporters to follow up on. And if I were in the news business, I'm not, I'm in the commentary business, I would think very seriously of starting a society of professional journalists and establish.
I thought they used to have one of those here.
I would think very seriously of establishing a society of professional journalists and setting up a kitty, which everybody contributed to, that would be their legal action fund. Because when the government does what it's supposed to do with the open government law and the freedom of information law, it makes their job a whole lot easier and a lot more thorough. We had a Mariana Society of Professional Journalists, but it folded probably 12 years ago. Lack of interest.
Yeah, at least that long ago. It's been a long time since I've heard of them.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious about that, if there was any way to check on them.
That's a good question, Harold. I'm glad.
I'm sure some of that garbage that the GVB is throwing out, and they say, oh, you can't talk about that. I'm sure the King Carl is getting some stuff through by talking about it, and then nobody follows up on him because they're scared of him.
It's very possible.
Not possible, probable.
Okay, Harold. Thanks for chiming in. Good talking to you.
Okay, have a nice day.
Thank you.
I think one organization had a conscience and had to re-vote. Was it the Contractors Licensing Board?
Uh-huh.
And then who was the one that fined the solar panel?
Yeah.
Where they had to reduce the initial fine.
That was the CL, Contractors Licensing Board.
Yeah.
And I should have mentioned to Harold, if you're still on the line, we do have the Vigilance Committee that does follow these things pretty closely. They are not in a position where they can file suit. And I've talked with people in the news business who say, well, they just won't do it until somebody files suit. And my response is, when Vigilance Committee files suits, they've lost. Because it's up to you guys, you folks in the newspaper and TV business, to hold these government agencies accountable and do the same thing that I do. Take a look at the agendas, and if the agendas are flawed, go to the meeting. And if they address something in the meeting, if they take action in the flawed meeting, run a news story about it. That'll work a whole lot better than a lawsuit, but it's more work. Yeah. And besides that, you might hurt somebody's feelings, which is the absolute no-no. Okay, so let's take another short break here, and we'll come back to McNinch versus Mendiola.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Okay, here we are back on another exciting chapter of Tall Tales. Jose Ted Pago chimes in and he says, what I've learned is Fernando Esteves is a puppet for the tyrant governor. Yeah, I thought, the shoulders on his shirt looked kind of funny, like they were standing up. Anyhow. And then Jose says, also comes along and says, talking about organizations that would ride herd on the open government law and the Sunshine Law. He says a judicial watch organization. And he's absolutely right. Tom Hinton runs an outfit called the Judicial Watch. And I read his stuff every day, and they have done some really, really good work. But in order to make that fly, you've got to have a fundraising capability. Lawyers don't work for nothing.
Maybe they have to get together with the Camacho Scholarship Foundation.
Yeah, maybe the Camacho Scholarship Foundation could make a donation. But that's what's required. And the Vigilance Committee is a good start, but it's all volunteers. Nobody gets paid, and they do very good work. But there's a limit to what you could expect from unpaid volunteers. Now, if somebody wanted to go out and do some fundraising and help them set up a kitty and hire lawyers, I think that would be eminently possible. But most people are going to say, well, yeah, it'd be nice if it happened, and I'll just, instead of donating to my Christmas club this year, I'll give them $1.
Elections are coming up. Make our executive candidates accountable for this so they can make their appointed directors accountable for this open government law. That's the best way. If you don't want to go through a vigilance committee type organization, just take your voice to the voting booth.
Exactly. Okay, next item on the card is McNinch versus Mendiola. This is Ron McNinch and let's see, what's Mendiola's first name?
Mark
Mendiola. A couple of members of the Board of Education who have had a couple of skirt-tearing contests already. When McNinch was off island, the superintendent dealt with Rugby Boy all by himself, and the superintendent's decision was let her play. And the board kind of went along with it, and McNinch said, this is a policy matter, not an operational matter. This should come before the board. Mendiola took some umbrage at that, and the next thing that comes along is we're appointing a new superintendent, or choosing a new superintendent of education, and Mendiola appoints a select committee to do the choosing in order to avoid the open government law, because he said it would take too long and time is of the essence.
Wrong.
And McNinch said, no, I'm an open government kind of guy. We got to stick to the open government law. And then McNinch said, you could have at least put me on that special committee. And Mendiola said, yeah, and you could have at least contacted me before you wrote the letter about Rugby Boy. So I didn't see anyone ripping off his glove and slapping the other one in the face, literally or figuratively, but perhaps that's what I have in front of me right now. McNinch has a column in the Post, and he says, oath of office should be meaningful. On June 2, the Guam Department of Education School Board met to discuss the search for a new superintendent. John Fernandez, who has served the system for 10 years, is moving on, and our board is conducting a search to find his replacement. I believe that Fernandez is the longest-serving state-level superintendent in the U.S., and he has done a lot of good work here. Let me explain. Fernandez holds two positions. I know this because I did it myself. He is a district superintendent. Every school district has a superintendent who is basically the GM of that school district. Almost all the states have something called a chief state school officer. In Wisconsin, I think he's the a superintendent of public instruction. He handled stuff like state aid to the schools, various kinds of rules, attendance procedures, on and on and on. He doesn't run a district. He has a sort of a management role over all of the public schools in the states. Now, here on Guam, the superintendent is both. He's both a district superintendent and a chief state school officer. And this article said no other chief state school officer in the whole country has served longer than 10 years. And McNinch thinks he's done a pretty good job as our district superintendent also. McNinch goes on to say, when I showed up at the meeting, I assumed we would just appoint a technical subcommittee to handle the details of the search. This is a fairly common action in this type of search, and I do not oppose this method. What alarmed me at the meeting was the notion circulated at the table that the subcommittee was going to operate outside the boundaries of the open government law. Yeah, where's that ominous music? Yeah. Let's try it again, Jose. Yeah. I assumed we would appoint a subcommittee to handle the details of the search. This was fairly common in this type of search, etc. What alarmed me at the meeting was the notion circulated at the table that the subcommittee was going to operate outside the boundaries of the open government law. In addition, I was informed that all of the meetings would be held on the 19th floor. You need a horn honk on that one, too. A lot easier being the producer for Tall Tales. Yeah.
I got blisters, Bob. I have blisters on my fingers.
Yeah, okay. McNinch says, I objected to this and I complained to the chair that I wished I'd been told about this. I wish I had been told about this. Well, that's what happened at the meeting, Ron. You better not have board members telling you stuff outside the meeting if you're going to be a champion of the open government law. If I had been consulted beforehand, I would have pointed out that this group would be bound to follow the open government law just as much as the board itself. On June 3, reporter Jolene Tovis recounted part of my objections in the Post. If I had been asked to serve on this subcommittee, I would have declined. But I would have also reminded everyone that the open government law applied to this activity. Okay, now what color is the rice here? What Ron McNinch says, that rice is orange. And we got Mark Mendiola saying, no, everybody, come on, Ron, it's red, it's red. Nobody will eat it if we tell them it's orange. In September 2021, I wrote my weekly column talking about oaths of office major officials take. Oaths of office major officials take. The oath taken by major government officials and legislators in Guam reads, quote, I solemnly swear in the presence of Almighty God that I will well and faithfully support the Constitution of the United States, the laws of the United States applicable to Guam, and the laws of Guam, and I will conscientiously and impartially discharge my duties as a member of the Guam legislature. I will conscientiously and impartially discharge my duties as a member of the school board in this case. All Guam education members are sworn in with this oath. Usually this is done with great ceremony and ritual and the oath is administered by a judge, or in some cases the governor or a lieutenant governor, but never by a talk show host. If the oath isn't going to mean anything, why have members take it? That's what we call a rhetorical question, sports fan. So that's Ron's way of saying, you guys took the oath. The Guam Board of Education created a subcommittee last week. This offspring has all the legal duties of the parent board. The Guam Department of Education is a government agency governed by the open government law. The Guam Code at 5 GCA section 8104 subsection 2 reads, public agency also includes any advisory advisory committee or advisory body of a public agency created by law, resolution, or any similar formal action of a public agency. The Guam Education Board, by official resolution, created a subcommittee to handle the hiring of the superintendent. This hiring is now the primary directive of the Education Board. My fellow Education Board members are all very good people. Then why aren't they following the law, Ron? Dr. Mary Okada will lead this committee, and I am sure she will follow the law. Well, I'll help you, Ron, with that one. Let me have a camera here, Jose. That's my tightly crossed fingers. That's about all I can do for you right now. I just don't have much faith. You know, when the chairman came along and said, it'll take too long if we have to do all of that open government stuff. But, of course, if you don't, let's say that you have two people. Let's say that I applied. And let's say that Jack McClukenbach applied. And Jack McCluken got the job. And you know me, I'm a nosy guy who likes to pick these kinds of fights. So I sue, and I say, you guys had that committee that never complied with the open government law. I don't care who you hired. You could have got Queen Elizabeth. As soon as she abdicates to come over and be be superintendent, it's void. Get him out of here. So, you know, the unfortunate thing here is that in order to get public officials to do what they're supposed to do, somebody's got to threaten them. Just doing it because it's the right thing to do isn't enough. And what kind of an example is our education board setting for students when they have that attitude? Let's break for the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A presidential push for gun legislation. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. President Biden takes to live TV to urge lawmakers to pass gun safety measures, and if not, for Americans to react at the ballot box this November.
It's got to be one of those issues where you decide your position on the issue, senator or candidate for House or Senate, on what we're going to do on us with assault weapons and how able to have 300 rounds in a magazine. And I mean, what you say on those things is going to determine how I'm going to vote for you.
The president appearing on Jimmy Kimmel Live on ABC a few hours ago after attending the Summit for Americas in Los Angeles. Earlier in the House, lawmakers heard from victims and family members of the mass shooting in Uvalde and Buffalo.
There was the Uvalde pediatrician parents who lost kids, and the harrowing tale of a fourth grader who survived the slaughter. New York Mayor Eric Adams begged lawmakers to stop the violence. But Second Amendment advocates warned against scaling back access to arms amid a crime wave. Republicans contend the Second Amendment is immutable. Bipartisan senators are negotiating a narrow gun bill, but barring assault weapons is off the table. Progressives could oppose a Senate bill, but some Democrats will take anything at this stage.
Fox's Chad Pergram. The entire House passed a wide-ranging bill yesterday that raises the age to buy a semi-automatic rifle to 21 and limits the sale of high-capacity ammunition magazines. Again, the Senate's not expected to pass that bill. The House committee investigating the attack on the Capitol goes prime time tonight as it broadcasts hearings over what members have uncovered.
Two announced witnesses so far: Capitol Police Officer Caroline Edwards, who was injured in the melee, and filmmaker Nick Quested, who captured key moments in the Capitol riot.
Fox's Mike Emanuel. America's listening to Fox News.
Stay on top of the latest forecast with
Kings Guam World Tennis Tour, presented by GTA, is bringing international tennis back to Guam. 4 weeks of international play will swing into action with 2 weeks of juniors, followed by 2 weeks of pros, May the 15th through June 12th. The Guam National Tennis Federation will host world-ranked players who will be coming to Guam from all over the world. Netters will compete for ranking points and cash to improve their position among the world's best. Matches will be played daily at the Guam National Tennis Center in Harmon, starting May 15th through June 12th. Special thanks to our platinum sponsors, Dimension Systems, New Gen, American Medical Center, and Morico Equipment.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
100 degrees as residents worried about rolling blackouts.
I think there's a lot of infrastructure issues that need to be addressed. And until that happens, I think we'll have a lot less to worry about.
But Peter Lake with the State Public Utilities Commission is issuing this guarantee.
I can absolutely guarantee the lights are going to stay on in Texas this summer because of the landmark legislation the Texas legislature passed in 2021.
Well, that legislation was passed after the grid went down during a deadly winter storm, leaving millions without power and costing more than 200 lives. A Florida man takes the law into his own hands during a carjacking. And also, we're hearing from Smucker's over the recall of Jif peanut butter and that it may cost the company millions.
The company estimates the impact of manufacturing downtime, customer returns, and inventory it can't sell, as well as other recall-related costs, could result in a loss of $125 million next year. The recall was issued May 20th as a result of a salmonella outbreak. 2 people were hospitalized, but the CDC says the actual number of people sickened is likely much higher. Lisa Lacera, Fox News.
And now Fox's Tom Graham has more on that carjacking in Florida.
When 3 Orlando carjackers stole Edgar Diaz's Dodge Caravan, he decided to give chase.
Right now, I'm on the street after them.
He borrowed his wife's car and tailed the suspects while also calling 911 dispatchers.
I'm driving too fast. I am driving that way because I don't want to lose them.
And he didn't lose them. Diaz was able to catch up to the trio of accused thieves, and so were responding officers. The 3 tried to flee on foot, but were quickly busted. Tom Graham, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Another great halftime show here on Tall Tales. They just get better and better every week, don't they? Let's see what Jose posted here. I have a major reservation of accepting any invitation to apply for superintendent if this subcommittee's meeting are not compliant. Yeah.
Imagine getting that job and then being told everything's null and void.
Yeah. What a disappointment, huh? And then Mano Franklin comes along and says, doing the right thing is not enough. Instead of doing things the right way, it's crab mentality, I tell you. Danger Will Robinson, wasteful use of taxpayers' dollars. Well, maybe so. But let's get back to the card here. Next item on the card is PUC versus Kyle DeHillig. Kyle DeHillig is a guy who wrote the really snotty letter about GPA to the newspaper. Why aren't we using alternative energy, and why are we poisoning our school kids, and on and on and on. And I was wondering, where is this guy coming from? And then we found out that what's he studying at the university, Jose? Some fancy title. You mentioned it earlier.
Wokeism biology.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Yeah, so just the classic lefty who figures that all we have to do is say renewable energy, and we can cap all the oil wells and turn off all of the generators run by diesel fuel, et cetera, et cetera. All of a sudden, we'll have all the light we need.
Well, he used that academic language at the end of his op-ed. We don't need any more of these power losers.
That's right, power losers, yeah. So the actual facts are these. First of all, the base rate for electric power has not increased since 2010. Now, tell me something else that you spend money on that hasn't gone up in price since 2010. I can't think of anything that I buy that is the same price now as it was in 2010. And the Power Authority is going to be 50% renewable in 2035 and 100% renewable in 2045. But you can't just snap your fingers and make it happen today. They are doing, I would have to say I've been very critical of them on the open government law, but on their real jobs, they're doing great. They're building that new power plant in Okadu, which is going to take your power bill down. They're going to avoid some hefty federal fines, etc. But that won't be enough. That won't be enough to quiet Kyle DeHillig, who apparently is, who I suspect is starting a new focus group called Kyle's Chronic Bitchers. because power rates are going to go up. And, of course, whose fault is that? It's GPA's fault because they're so wasteful. So here's the story. Public Utility Commission to decide power price next week. I put this on the card as PUC versus Kyle DeHelic. A decision on increasing the price of power will happen next week, according to Public Utilities Commission, which is meeting earlier than normal because some commissioners will be off island later this month. GPA has proposed a 3-step increase in the fuel surcharge, which is the most expensive part of the power bill, starting July 1. Under GPA's proposal, customers will pay about 28% more for power by the end of the year. Residential customers who use 1,000 kilowatt hours of power currently pay $307.03, of which $209.52 is the cost of fuel. This is unrealistic because this is a much lower rate than normal. This is the so-called lifeline rate. According to GPA, it will be more than $70 million in the hole for its fuel costs by the end of January 2023 if the fuel surcharge isn't increased. The current surcharge, 20.9 cents per kilowatt hour, has been in effect since April 1. GPA General Manager John Beneventi last month asked the governor if she could use federal pandemic funding to provide relief to GPA customers. According to the governor's office, American Rescue Plan money can't be used for that purpose because the higher prices are unrelated to the Wuhan virus pandemic. Beneventi said the governor told him she's looking at other options and is trying to find a way to help. She asked Beneventi if he liked pork adobo. She suggested that perhaps a devotion to meals consisting of pork adobo and red rice might be the solution to the problem. Yeah, if you're not a regular tailgater, you probably wonder what I'm talking about. GPA's proposed a 3-step increase in surcharge, also known as the Levelized Energy Adjustment Clause, or LEAC. It would increase to 24 cents on July 21, as you were on July 1, to 27 cents on September 1, and to 29.62 cents on November 1. September 1, 27, as you were. July 1, 27, September 1, 29.62. If approved, customers who use 1,000 kilowatt hours of power would pay $337.92 per month starting July 1, $367.69 starting September 1, and $393.78 starting November 1. But a lot more for everybody else, again, because this is a lifeline rate. GPA also wants permission to use as much as $10 million from its self-insurance fund in order to buy fuel. PUC Chief Administrative Law Judge Fred Harecki on Wednesday said the fuel surcharge normally is adjusted in late July to take effect August 1. But the PUC will consider GPA's petition this month. So GPA is asking for this increase because the power agency is requesting expedited relief. The PUC was supposed to meet June 30, but Harecki said some commissioners won't be able to attend on that date. The PUC scheduled a special meeting for 6:30 p.m. June 16 to consider the fuel surcharge and 2 construction projects at the Port Authority. Okay, so that's the story. And as I mentioned earlier, power rates will go up, not because the power authority is wasting money, giving people raises or something irresponsible. It's going up because the price of oil is going up. And it's a real world that we live in. If we don't have enough money to buy oil from refineries in Singapore, we can't burn oil, we can't generate electricity. That is just not an alternative that should even be considered, not buying more oil. We've got to continue to buy more oil regardless of where the price goes. And as I mentioned a little earlier, GPA, to its credit, primarily John Benevente, who's really on top of things, has a plan that'll take us out to 2045 to replace a couple of the old diesel oil generators, one of them, the larger one at Okadu, and to convert to solar power, 25% in 2025, as you were 2035, and 100% in 2045. And I think it's really remarkable that we're doing that well. But it's, as I said, there's just no getting around where we are. Oil costs money, and we may think that Guam is the center of the earth, that everything revolves around what we do here. Unfortunately for us, it doesn't. As the world goes to a large extent, so goes the island of Guam. If our president had not canceled the XL pipeline and stopped all of the leasing of oil reserves on U.S. territory, we were energy sufficient when he came on board. We produced enough oil that we didn't have to import from any other country. Our president fixed that the first day he was in office. He canceled that XL pipeline. And, of course, the lefties in his party loved him. We've got to think of the ecology first. And if we don't have enough oil to burn in our generators, think of what it'll do for our environment. If you're not running those doggone generators, no more carbon emission. It can't happen soon enough for me. And then, of course, there are some rumors floating around out there on the internet that Joe Biden has purposely taken steps to see that gasoline goes up to like $8 a gallon in California for a very easily understood reason. The higher the price of gasoline, the more attractive electric vehicles become, and the better it is for the planet. Of course, nobody stops to ask where the electricity to charge up the batteries in those electric cars is going to come from. Solar power. I think, I wonder if Kyle DeHelig is on Joe Biden's chat group. Probably, huh?
It's integrated biology.
Integrated biology. I bet he even knows what a woman is. You know, the guy ought to pack up and shove off for law school. He's obviously Supreme Court material. Integrated biology and all. Okay, next item on the card is Manuel Lujan Cruz versus Bob. And once again, I got to do my Rush Limbaugh interpretation here. Sterling, I don't like to talk about myself too much here on the show. This time I have to, because it's about me. Yeah, so this guy, Ray touched on this morning. Professor Ron McNinch, also known as Dr. Ron McNinch, forwarded a doctoral dissertation to Ray that mentions he and I in it. And I'm going to spend a fair amount of time on that dissertation. To me, it's kind of like a gold mine. You know, I've stuck my head in the door. I just got to go in there with a pick, and I can find some nuggets for a show every day in there for the next 88 years, probably. But it's pretty much the standard Bavacqua, pretty much the standard Three Stooges pitch. How horrible it is if you're living on Guam, if you are indigenous. What a terrible place it is to live. What a terrible colonizer the United States has been. Please help us. It's that kind of a deal. But I can't say that I've already developed a strong bias against this dissertation, and my bias will become very clear as soon as I finish reading just a couple pages of it. And here we are. I start on page 47. I just start right at the beginning, in the middle of a sentence. Well, as news media actors on Guahan are thus left to negotiate between a local extant colonial mediascape and a broader imperial mediascape, both structures work to manufacture consent over military and political affairs, which create economic hardship and cause serious cultural and economic environmental damage. Citing Bavacqua and Cruz, 2020, page 132. If he's citing Bavacqua, this is ironclad. The permeation of remember, this guy is a candidate for a doctoral degree, so he has to use, I don't know what the quota per page is, probably 15 sesquipedal words per page. Now, if you've forgotten the meaning of the word sesquipedal, I'll explain again. Sesqui means 1.5. Like a sesquicentennial celebration is held in a city for its 150th year anniversary. And pedal, P-E-D-A-L, that means foot. So a sesquipedal word is one that's 1.5 foot long. So people will try to impress you by using sesquipedal words like sesquipedal in a sentence, even if a shorter, clearer word would more than suffice. So here we go with Mr. Sesquipedal words here. Let's see. A permeation of right-wing COVID denial from the United States into local discourse is a fitting example of this dynamic. On August 21, 2020, a group of about 50 predominantly white business owners, they're the worst kind, white business owners marched down the main strip of the island's tourist district, Tumum, during the, quote, "Give Us Back Our Freedoms" protest. Parroting similar pro-business, anti-government rhetoric seen across the United States, the group waved large American flags as they responded to the purported tyranny of not being able to go to the beach. Wow. The protest was stoked by conservative white settler commentators across local media, mainstream media. Now, be ready for this. Stoked by conservative white settler commentators across local mainstream media. So when I read that, I said, gosh, I hope they're talking about me. And here it is, such as Bob Klitzkie. Yeah, I feel like I'm, at the major league draft, and somebody bought my contract. Such as Bob Klitzkie. Now here's the part that destroys Mr. Manuel L. Cruz's credibility right out of the gate. Mr. Bob Klitzkie, who took his morning talk radio program to accuse the governor of overreach. My morning talk radio program, accusing the governor of overreach for mandating the use of masks and enforcing social distancing guidelines in public areas. He cites Klitzkie, 2020, August 21. And then he goes on to say, in between playing syndicated Fox News clips, that is just too transparent, right? So, okay, everybody who's reading this, Fox radio news clips, you know what kind of guy this guy is, yeah. He probably is a Trump supporter, yeah, right. He probably owns a half dozen guns. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got a Bible on the table while he's doing his talk show.
Just a little inside baseball information, not to bore everybody here. It's a syndicated top-of-the-hour news that we broadcast from Fox and several other talk shows during the day. There are other radio stations on Guam that do similar from Fox. Maybe it's like the 2-minute or I don't know if it's even 5-minute. They even do a bottom-of-the-hour news service. But are they deemed the same, what do they call it? Conservative white settler commentating?
No.
No. But
and how often do we run Fox News clips during the show? Never. Never. We never run Fox News clips during the show. We have hard breaks on the hour and half hour where we run news, but never during the show.
Never, ever.
No. So, credibility is a wonderful thing. But once you lose it, it's really hard to get back. So he says, in between playing syndicated Fox News clips, Klitzkie's co-broadcaster, now that's not you, Jose.
Nope.
Co-broadcaster Ray Gibson asks, what if everybody said no to the government lockdown measures, coaxing listeners into a deeper distrust of the government while dismissing the severity of COVID-19. So that's why I posted on Facebook here during the break, will the real Ray Gibson please stand up? Now, I'm going to stand up, and Jose, give me a camera here. If you haven't distinguished the difference between Ray and I yet, now is your chance. I got a student. Okay, this is me. I am not Ray Gibson. Not even close to being Ray Gibson.
Nope.
I am Bob.
Are you sure?
Yeah, so as long as you're smearing somebody or slamming them, it's really not necessary to be accurate in your facts, because the slam or the smear is a really important part of it. Fox Radio news clips, morning talk show, radio co-host, and all the rest of that stuff. Similarly, the former publisher of the Daily News, Lee Weber, used his weekly column in the Post to ask, quote, what possible loss of freedoms will be next, while maligning the governor and the Guam legislature by stating, neither the governor nor this do-nothing legislature has come up with a viable plan to flatten this outbreak and keep it that way while simultaneously not crippling the island's economy any more than it has been crippled already. Yeah, and no doubt, I don't keep close enough track of this, but that's the kind of stuff that would get Lee Weber a blue star.
He didn't mention his co-broadcaster.
Yeah, who's Lee Weber's co? If this Yahoo had confused Weber and I could kind of understand it, because we're both tall, really good-looking white guys.
But you sport the mustache.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Now Ray's not quite the same as us because he's not tall. Otherwise, So then we are informed these discourses are part of the milieu of settler cultural productions which continue to drive the dispossession and militarization of Chamorro-land. Yeah, now let me talk about this settler BS, okay? A settler. I suppose that technically I am a settler, but we don't really have settler colonization here. We certainly had settler colonization in North America, where millions of people from Europe migrated to the United States with no hope of ever going back to Europe again. and we had settler colonization in Australia and New Zealand. But if white folks are settler colonizers, how come we're about the smallest minority of people on the island? There are more people from the FSM here now than there are white folks. So what kind of, we must, if we are settler colonizers, we must be the poorest ones ever to come out of the chute. Okay, let's take a short break and we'll go to Wrigley Field and see if we can round up some settlers there.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
The 2022 GSPN Boys Volleyball All-Star Game presented by the Guam Army National Guard goes down Sunday, June 12th at the FD Phoenix Center. The best high school players from both the public and private schools will put their talents on display, coached by the champion coaches. Watch it live at the Phoenix Center or streaming on GuamSportsNetwork.com, powered by IT&E. The 2022 GSPN Boys Volleyball All-Star Game, June 12th.
Yeah, boy, am I glad that Simon tuned in today. I made a wrong mistake. Yeah, call up Guinness Book of Records. I made a wrong mistake. I got a WhatsApp yesterday from somebody at GPA who gave me the figures that I announced, but I didn't remember them. I didn't write them down, and I got them wrong. But Simon comes aboard to set the record straight. 25% of our energy from renewable by 2025. God, that's just 3 years from now. And 50% by 2030. The balance of energy will come from using 1.2 million barrels a year less due to a more efficient new Ukado generator. Do the math of using 1.2 billion barrels a year less per year. That's how power bills, it's hard to read, will start to come down. But as you wisely point out, our honor, no one on the planet going to 100% overnight due to renewable costs and less reliability. It's a migration, not a light switch. Well, thanks a lot for chiming in. I've got to come up with an excuse here for being so wrong. I was reading this guy's stuff here, the inaccuracy is like a virus. It's kind of contagious. It infects anybody who reads his stuff. Sorry about that, Simon. Glad you chimed in and set the record straight. Okay, back to Manuel L. Cruz versus Bob. So, yeah, I could understand if he confused Weber and I, but it doesn't matter. The operative principle here is if you're slamming somebody, you don't have to have any accuracy about anything other than the slam or the smear. And I was talking a little bit about settler colonialism and how really pee-poor white folks are at being settler colonizers here on Guam. Not anywhere near as efficient as we were in North America or as the Aussies were in Australia or the Kiwis are in NZ, etc. We're a small minority. Politically, the underserved, I suppose, since we don't really seem to get very many folks of our pigmentation into the legislature or the front office or the Washington delegate. Right now, our legislature is 14 out of 15 Chamorros. Governor, lieutenant governor, and Washington delegate, all Chamorros. It just, I guess he figures he has to come up with these papers because Chamorros just, well, actually they are. Actually, they do, don't they?
It would be interesting if he also published the backgrounds of some of these separatist sites.
Yeah.
A little bit of white settlement in there.
Exactly. And then as far as the settler mentality, I'll just tell you my own personal story here. I probably told it before. The nice thing about being old and hanging out with old folks is you can't remember what stories you told, and your old folk friends can't either, so it kind of washes. It's kind of a wash. But in my senior year in college, back when I was 24 years old, believe it or not, I was that young once upon a time, I had the wanderlust. I wanted to go to faraway places with strange-sounding names. And I wrote letters all over the world, including Guam, because there was a placement office where I went to school, and they had all these addresses, so I did it. And I got a letter from somebody here on Guam telling me that a Guam recruiter would be coming to my campus. Would I like to see him? And I set up an appointment, and I went and saw him. He's a nice old guy and his wife. And they had a slide projector. An awful lot of folks out there in our international radio listening audience wouldn't know a slide projector from a playground slide. But I looked at that and I said, boy, that looks like a really interesting place. Salary was pretty low, and, it didn't sound very attractive. It didn't look it kind of looked attractive because kind of exotic. So I was wondering, I don't know if I really want to go there or not. There, I could, in a sense, kind of go wherever I wanted. But this guy said to me very sincerely, he said, Mr. Klitzkie, I really would appreciate it if you would apply for a job to come and teach school on Guam. We really need teachers. So I was young and impressionable, and I said, okay, I'll do it. And I applied, and believe it or not, I got hired. And I came, and I'm still here. So I guess the fact that I was invited by an official of the government, well, a settler's a settler. It doesn't make any difference. Once a colonizer, always a colonizer. It's indelible. Now, something probably that everybody has forgotten except the folks who were around here during the time was that from, the early 60s on for a long time, we brought out plane loads of white teachers from the United States because we weren't able to produce enough local teachers at the College of Guam at the time. So a lot of folks came out here. Some of them are still here. Bill Pesh is still here. Jerry Hogan's gone. What's his name? I can't remember. Marsh had a first name, but I never knew what it was. Marsh, the father of Kelly Marsh, Titano. And just a huge crop of folks came out here. And all of these houses that you see built near schools, those houses were built for the teachers that were imported from the mainland. And, of course, bringing out a group of young adventurers, folks from the mainland, definitely had an impact on the culture. Whether you liked it or not, it did. So that's where a lot of the colonizers came from. And I suppose probably a lot of the wrong attitudes sprung from. It'd be really nice if somebody over there at the Humanities Council would take on a project of writing up the history of contract teachers here on the island. Pretty significant impact on the island. But anyhow, the way it's batted around, I wear the word colonizer and the word settler like a badge. Maybe I'll have some T-shirts made up that said, "Hi, my name's Bob. I'm a colonizer." And then put a picture of the flag on my sleeve. So
that'll get them.
That would kind of let folks know where I'm coming from if they don't already know. And I don't see that being branded a colonizer makes a person unsuitable for living on the island. You know, I read my Confessions of a Third-Class Citizen. In fact, if I could, probably can't find it, but if I could find it, I read the last part of it again. I couldn't be happier than moving out here almost 60 years ago as a teacher. I love the place. I love the people. I love the culture. I love everything about the island. Even the guys like Manuel Lujan Cruz. And of course, when the recruiter back in 1963 asked me to come out because we really needed teachers, he didn't warn me. He didn't tell me that after you've been there, after you've taught there for a while, Bob, and after you've been there for, you know, about 55 years or so, people will start calling you names like colonizer and settler. He never told me that. Of course, how could he? Because he didn't know. But anyhow, here I am, big as life, twice as ugly. And I whatever credibility you would have had, Manuel L. Cruz, you blew it all by getting these facts wrong. And I use these kinds of examples all the time. If you jump on an airplane and you've served your meal, and when it's time, the hostess comes along and picks up your tray, and you try to put the tray table back up and it won't stay, you're thinking, wow, if they can't make this work right, what about the engines and the radio and the navigation system? If this guy can't get simple facts like this right, did he get anything at all right in what he's doing? And moving it one step further, he didn't get the facts right, but he went out of his way to turn it into a smear. So do we look at every other one of his smears in here with the same lens that he's not right on the facts? But he's like my line about tall tales. He never lets the truth interfere with the telling of a good story.
I like that that concept. I don't know if it's exactly the same on the nose, the bigotry of soft or low expectations, as if anybody but white settlers can criticize a governor or can criticize their government.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing that we aren't capable of it.
No.
Chamorros are capable. I'd like to point out also that he's only speaking about Chamorros on Guam because in Saipan and Rhodantinian, they don't capitalize C and H.
No, that's true, yeah.
So they don't have white settlement colonizer problems up there.
Well, or else they haven't drunk the Kool-Aid. They haven't drunk enough of it, because they don't even know how to spell Chamorro up in the Northern Marianas. So let's see what else I can find in here that's interesting. Well, let's go to Churchill Downs, and we'll come back to this guy.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Yeah, okay. During the break, I got a little help here from Mark and Francis Ishmael, or excuse me, Jose Ted Pago Jr. Some names of the old contract teachers. Some of it starting to come back. Names like Pat Rankin, Judy Flores, whose name wasn't Flores when she arrived. Judy Flores and her mom and dad came as teachers, living down in Lahan. Riley Rigel, and then from the back of my memory, Tom Beatty, Marshall Bridge, Spanish and French. How about this one? Bill Taggarty. Yeah, Bill Taggarty, Daryl's dad. And his Bill Taggarty's close friend, Ron Paul. And it just literally hundreds of people came over here because the island needed teachers. Not quite understanding that we should have stayed home instead of bringing our colonizer, white supremacist mentalities with us over here to the island, all the harm that we did. Okay, so when you have a dissertation, you cite to the sources in like a bibliography, and I'm looking at that, and I see my name, Klitzkie, The Point, No Mask on the Truth, Facebook Live, and then some URL type things. And then right under that is CRIES, TW. And this is what it says, CRIES, Disney Plus policy is a reminder of unequal treatment for those in the territories. citing to his letter to the Daily News. You know, it's just amazing. I mean, we ripped him apart here on the show for being so petty. Remember that?
This isn't a high school essay.
Yeah.
This is not somebody's op-ed or letter to the editor.
Yeah.
This is something he's presenting to a board to get his doctorate.
To his doctoral committee. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And he's citing Kreese's belly aching because he can't get, because Disney won't let him play the show out here in Guam.
Wait, but he's a white settler.
So what does he expect, right? Yeah.
Can't have it both ways.
No, you can't. Yeah. So, and he goes on to say, the Klitzkies, Gibsons, and Webers of Guahan, let's see, let me start at the beginning here. There is a not so subtle message being communicated by the Klitzkies, Gibsons, and Webers of Guahan that is reminiscent of the United States' paternalism following the Spanish-American War. Quote, the island is better run by white business owners and military brass than by Chamorro people. You know, I hear Ray say that at his show every day. And I got tied a string around my brain to remind myself of that. Yeah.
Nothing says white business owners on Guam like Klitzkie, Gibson, and Weber.
Absolutely.
Those are not the names I think of. Not to take away from your names, but there are other people on Guam that are known business owners, and a lot of them are not white.
Yeah. You know, like Calvo and Berdalio and the Big Five. Such examples illustrate how the extant colonial mainstream mediascape presents a homogeneous settler common sense under the guise of objectivity and genuine debate. And 3.2.6, modes of dissimulation in the Japan-U.S. defense meeting. Decades of re-enculturation in the media have forged an intimacy between the Chamorro people and the United States, which is a terrible thing, in which the national security interests of the United States are conflated with the interests of the Chamorro. Guam has one of the highest military recruitment rates per capita. Now, this can't possibly mean that people who enlist in the various armed forces, like the United States, want to be in the military of the United States? May even want to live in the United States? It can't possibly mean that. It's just a relic of colonialism, the structures of colonialism. And so often, as Bavakwa states, the home that soldiers serving abroad are staunchly defending becomes far more than just Nana and her Finitinas Chamorro, but Uncle Sam and his military status quo as well, as though there's something wrong with that. That's exactly the message that I communicated to the governor about her State of the Territory address. And we ought to be proud that we're tough, resourceful people out here on the front line defending the entire country, not wandering around with a tin cup asking folks to feel sorry for us. But, you know, I hadn't read this by that before that. Uncle Sam, as you were, military activity and development on Guahan are thus formed as overtly positive, with proponents claiming potential economic and security benefits while adverse impacts are downplayed. The duplicity of this strategy constitutes a mode of dissimulation which reproduces settler colonial militarist common sense through the concealment of relations of domination, which are present in the news coverage of a joint military meeting between the United States and Japan in August 2020. At the time, tensions between the United States and China flared, while Guahan was experiencing a spike in Wuhan virus cases. As the U.S. Department of Defense bolstered its aggressive forward presence in the Pacific, the Chinese Communist Party fired a missile and aptly named the Guam Killer into the South China Sea on August 27, just days before a joint meeting between U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and the Japanese Secretary of Defense. I ran out of article. I'll have time to go through this and pull out the really poignant parts, but I want to get back to this every day because it's a classic example of what I talk about here on Tall Tales. The willingness of smart, educated people to come forward with a battery of half-truths and critical race theory type tactics to try to convince the people of Guam that they would be much better off as an independent state completely shed from the United States. And of course, the major pro-vendors of that tactic are the Three Stooges, Bavakwa, Juan Pat Tin, and Tony Babauta. And now I guess we've got another stooge to join the race. Now, of course, where does this guy work? Where else? University of Guam. And as far as I can tell, I haven't run the numbers, but Robert Underwood, Mr. 1972 critical race theory, was pretty good at seeding the entire university with separatists like Bakwa and some of the other folks out there. So I'll come back to this tomorrow. In the meantime, I've probably got Manuel Lujan Cruz on the line, so let me see what he wants to talk about. And I'm going to wrap it up with Winning in Ukraine, a French Perspective. Do I have a phone call, Jose? No phone call.
The caller just wanted to remind us that he said nowhere in the United States do you have a 30-mile radius all branches of the military, including the Coast Guard. It's just this is Guam, and he's just making that comment. It's remarkable that we all exist in this area, or they all exist in this area too. Just a factoid.
That what is it again?
That all branches of the military exist on this island in a 30-mile radius. I don't think anywhere in the States has this concentration
Okay.
of the military.
All four branches.
All four branches,
All four branches.
including the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
And I believe we also have reserves here.
Yeah, and I think the Space Force is making
That's
noise.
right.
Yeah, I think even the Space Force is here, at least notionally.
And I guarantee you Adelup is embracing that.
The Space Force.
All branches of government being here.
Yeah. Okay, winning in Ukraine, a French perspective. As Russia's war in Ukraine is about to enter its fourth month, a question has been at the center of a passionate debate. Are France and Germany trying to pressure Ukraine into negotiations with Russia? Declarations from the German chancellor asking President Vladimir Putin to accept a ceasefire as quickly as possible, or from the French president warning against humiliating Russia, have raised fears across Europe that Paris and Berlin are making overtures to Moscow. While legitimate given the gravity of the situation, these concerns are nonetheless based on a twisted understanding of the French and German positions. Current criticisms often underestimate how far France and Germany have shifted in their approach to Russia. Since the beginning of the war, their strategy has been very clear. The West has been pressuring Moscow and supporting Kiev until Ukraine's victory. Both countries have played a driving role in the adoption of robust sanctions at the EU level and are now supporting an oil embargo on Russia. As explained by French officials, the goal is to suffocate the Russian economy and to punish the Russian oligarchs. Far from trying to accommodate Russia, Paris and Berlin are leading the international effort to investigate and prosecute the possible war crimes committed by the Russian military. France has notably increased its financial support to the International Criminal Court and sent a team of forensic experts in Bucha. After a slow start, France and Germany have also ramped up their military support to Ukrainian armed forces, with Berlin sending anti-aircraft tanks and Paris providing long-range artillery systems. Ukrainian troops have already been trained on French and German soil to operate these systems. In a recent call with President Zelensky, President Emmanuel Macron announced that French arms delivery will intensify. Both countries are also among the largest contributors to the European Peace Facility, which now covers 2 billion euros worth of military assistance to Ukraine. But France and Germany are also mindful of leaving the door open to a negotiated settlement of the conflict. This is why Macron, and to a lesser extent German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, are maintaining their contacts with President Putin. Often criticized for being vain, this phone diplomacy is actually demanded by the Ukrainian leader himself. I got to stop there. It's unfortunate that my timing's a little off, but I'd really like to have Frenchie chime in on this. Maybe we could do that tomorrow. But as it is, it's the end of another perfect day here on Tall Tales, and time for me to say, let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
No executive order. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. President Biden says he won't act independently from Congress and issue executive orders on gun safety. He explained last night as he appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live on ABC.
I don't want to emulate Trump's abuse of the Constitution and constitutional authority. And so, and I mean that sincerely, because I often get asked, look, the Republicans don't play it square. Why do you play it square?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? If we do the same thing they do, our democracy will literally be in jeopardy.
Lawmakers in the House took action on guns yesterday, passing a bill that would, among other things, raise the age to buy a semi-automatic rifle to 21. That bill, though, has a slim chance of passage in the Senate. Fox's Jared Halpern says the House passed the bill after a committee heard from Uvalde and Buffalo victims and family members.
Fourth grade student Mia Cedillo says after her teacher and classmates were shot at Robb Elementary School,
I thought he was going to come back to the room. So I grabbed the blood and put it all over me.
Mia called 911. Lexi Rubio was killed with 18 other students. Her mother, Kimberly Rubio, telling the House Oversight Committee.
Today, we stand for Lexi, and as her voice, we demand action.
Another House committee is ready for prime time. Starting tonight, the panel investigating the Capitol riot will broadcast hearings live. California Democratic Congressman Pete Aguilar.
This is not a responsibility that anyone on the committee takes lightly, but it's absolutely necessary to set the record straight for the American public.
Republicans accuse Democrats of using the hearings to fire up their base for the November midterms. And gas prices rose again yesterday. AAA says the national average now $4.97 a gallon. America's listening to Fox News.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts ad-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Trey Gowdy, the Fox News Rundown, Will Kane, Brian Kilmeade, and so much more. Go to foxnewspodcasts.com for all the details. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters, and Fox News contributors. Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. New from the Fox News Podcasts Network, Dana Perino, co-host of the 5 and America's Newsroom on Fox News Channel, returns to the world of audio with a new limited-time podcast, Everything Will Be Okay with Dana Perino. Building off the success of her best-selling book of the same name, Dana provides an unequaled brand of advice built on real-life experience and interviews experts and individuals that make a difference in the lives of others. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Congressional lawmakers are considering a serious effort to advance a bill that would beef up security for Supreme Court justices and their families. That after police arrested a California man yesterday on charges of attempting to kill Justice Kavanaugh. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell.
They need to stop their multi-week blockade against the Supreme Court security bill and pass it before the sun sets today.
Police arrested John Roski near Kavanaugh's Maryland home. A Marine Corps Osprey aircraft crashed yesterday in Southern California with 5 Marines on board. Local media report 4 crew members died. That aircraft was based at Camp Pendleton. More planes loaded with baby formula from other countries are on their way to the U.S.
One flight carrying infant formula from Australia is set to arrive in Pennsylvania today, with another from Germany scheduled to land in Fort Worth, Texas. An additional Australian shipment is due to arrive in California on Saturday. It's part of the Operation Fly Formula international campaign to ease formula shortages in the U.S. Over the next 3 weeks, the White House says more than 300,000 pounds of Kendamil infant formula will be shipped to the U.S. from London. The Biden administration says Operation Fly Formula has shipped the equivalent of 1.5 million bottles of Nestle infant formula and is sourcing flights for millions more from Australia and the UK. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Sad news out of Northern California. A woman says her heroic dog, Eva, who defended her from a mountain lion attack last month, died yesterday.